Hello everybody, it me Scoop, and I have been living in fear for far too long. I have decided to dig deeper into the farthest reaches of my brain than I thought possible, and unveil one of my most well locked up, suppressed traumatic memories. Yesterday, I rewatched Monster House.
The house is alive!
Now this movie does actually have a lot of history with me, because I usually have an obsession, like at any given time, whether that be the Flash TV show, Spider-Man as a whole, the MCU, Subnautica, Five Nights at Freddy's, anything like that. I hop around a little bit, but I always have some kind of obsession, and my first ever, when I was around 3 or 4, was Monster House. I don't know who at the MPAA let this movie slide, but oh my god, this scarred me, bro. The amount of nightmares I had from this film is truly unmatched. It was never ending. It got to the point my parents had to literally smash the DVD in front of me, and I wish I was making that up. So now we're going to talk about this movie, because oh my god, how was this shown to children? Now, if we're being real honest and real fair, it's really not that scary. There are just a few specific sequences where they just cooked way too hard, and like, holy shit. Because I'm not actually joking. There's 1 or 2 moments in here that are genuinely like good horror. Like, not just for children. Like, if they like cranked it up just a smidgy widgy more, it would be like a full-blown actual real horror movie. Now, first things first, because we're reliving this as the experience of myself as a child, we got to go through the DVD menu, because that in itself was truly an experience. I mean, the Sony Pictures musical intro thing that plays right when you pop the DVD in, oh my god, I was sent back in time and it was like I was 5 years old again. Now, before there was Netflix, I owned about 500 DVDs, give or take maybe 50. We had this super duper Blu-ray player that held all of them at once, which was really cool. You could just kind of spin a dial and it would show you which one you were on, and then you could play it on any TV in the house. Smart homes of like 2008. I dug through there, I pulled out Monster House, but pretty much every movie I had this Sony Pictures thing play, so this really was bringing me back to the childhood. But anyway, all that rambling aside, we finally got to the DVD menu, and I remember why this movie gave me nightmares, because look at this menu. I mean, sure, is the house breathing like that a little bit goofy? Yeah, but it doesn't do that in the movie, and I'm assuming they put it in the menu because otherwise it would be too freaky. Like, I don't know what it is about the house, but they just got something so right with its design that it is just so off-putting to look at. And I'm not sure if this is just all of my childhood fears like stirring inside of me that when I look at this thing I get freaked out, or if it just is freaky, but I'm gonna give this movie the credit and say it is just that freaky to look at. And having the shades kind of point its eyes, it's like it's having a literal stare off with you, like it knows you're watching it, and that's what spooked me out the most. And just look at what happens when you press play. Like, who allowed this? The monster literally eats you to start the movie. Like, there's just something kind of fourth wall breaking about that. I mean, it is breaking the fourth wall, literally. But for a child specifically, that is not right. You do not show kids a fourth wall break with a monster. Come on, man. Hey guys, a pretty ghoulish looking editor Scoop here. I just realized I didn't leave a transition for this anywhere in the video, but I just absolutely have to include this. You gotta see what happened when I press play on the DVD menu. This was insane. Alright, everybody listen up. I just want to let it be known, this movie is fucking cursed. The second I hit play, without skipping a beat, there was an insane lightning strike, like down the street with a huge thing of thunder, and now the rainstorm of the century is going on. It wasn't supposed to rain today. It's hailing, bro. It's like 75 degrees out, and it's hailing, because I pressed play on this movie.
Here goes the umbrella.
Are you serious?
Yes. There it goes, there it goes, there it goes.
That's not good. Well, I don't think it's gonna blow away. So I did watch the first couple of minutes of this movie on the DVD because I thought I was going to watch the whole thing on the DVD to really get that experience, but oh my god, the full screen version of this movie is atrocious. You lose like half of the frame, and it's in like 480p, so it just kind of looks like a YouTube analog horror video, and I just wasn't having it, so I downloaded the widescreen edition off of a fun website, and that's how I watched the rest of the movie instead, and it was definitely worth it. So the movie begins with just like a little girl riding her tricycle down the street until old man Never, I thought it was Never Cracker, but it's actually Never Cracker. That was a weird history revision that I found out upon rewatch. Old man Never Cracker comes charging out of the house, and oh my god, this is one of the most ominous character intro shots I've seen in a minute. In any movie, this is freaking ominous. So for a literal children's movie, having this skinny, crazy old man come running out of his literal monster of a house at a child who's stuck on his lawn, it's a little intense. Although I will admit his running animation is a tad goofy. There's definitely memes you can make about this, I'm sure. I don't know. But him screaming at her, "Do you want to be eaten alive?" I mean,
Do you want to be eaten alive? No! Get out of here!
it's just so intense for a children's movie, and that's what happens a lot. Like, the sound effects in this movie, they just cooked so hard with the sound design. Like, it's just pulse-pounding stuff, which is like, guys, it's a kid's movie. Like, kids' movies should be good, but if it's a horror movie, you gotta dial it back a little bit, okay? So he takes her tricycle and he destroys it and she runs away. And then we see, with one of the most insane shots in cinematic history, Sam Raimi style, we fly across the street through the telescope and we meet our protagonist, DJ.
Hi, I'm JD. DJ.
Now, DJ is an absolute legend, and right at the beginning we have one of the most relatable scenes in movie history where his parents say goodbye as they go away for the weekend and the babysitter is about to arrive, and it's just so relatable because the mom is smothering him and the dad doesn't give a crap and he just wants to get out of there. He literally hits DJ's best friend with the car while they're driving away and gets mad at DJ's friend. So typical dad activity, pretty relatable stuff here. So that's when we get introduced to DJ's best friend, Chowder, and as much as I hate to admit it, Chowder is literally me, bro.
I'm playing basketball. It's time for an in-your-face disgrace.
I don't know what happened here, but almost every word out of Chowder's mouth is somehow an adult joke, and it actually made me laugh out loud like several times. He's pretty funny.
Chowder, where are your parents?
My dad's at the pharmacy and my mom's at the movies with her personal trainer.
Or he's just plain weird where you start laughing because you're just so uncomfortable by what you're witnessing on screen. So the main conflict of this movie is that DJ wants to be seen as an adult, even though he's like a prepubescent 12 to 13-year-old. And he also has no friends except for Chowder, but that's not really brought up except for one or two times when Chowder's like, dude, you're being weird. This is why we have no friends. So this arc just straight up is not really resolved by the end of the movie. I mean, I guess by the end he decides to go trick-or-treating because, of course, the movie's set at Halloween. And it's supposed to be like, oh, look, he's embracing having fun and being a child again. But I'm going to be honest, I don't really follow the arc here that well. I think the point of his lesson is supposed to be like he was the only one, even the adults, who was taking the monster house situation seriously, and it could have gone really, really bad, but he ends up saving the day. And now that he's done all this work, he's going to enjoy being a child again. But I don't know. I don't really see like the downsides of him taking it seriously. Like, he definitely should have taken it seriously because then he saves the town from a literal monster that was like eating children and dogs and stuff. He saves Mr. Nevercracker from having to live with his monster ghost wife lady. Generally, it just seems like he did a good thing. So I don't know, a bit of a weird arc. But anyway, we should probably talk about this movie's art style. So it actually looks fairly decent by today's standards because they went with this weird, almost claymation looking style where there's not a lot of effects with stuff with the water and the hair and all of that. And yeah, it just aged pretty well. It's just the water specifically looks uniquely terrible. But basically, the two boys are playing basketball until the ball bounces onto Nevercracker's lawn. And the rule is, if it goes on Nevercracker's lawn, it's gone. It is the monster house's. Although they don't really know the house is a monster, which I didn't even really think about until just now. Like, DJ knows something suspicious is going on, so he's monitoring the house. but all he really sees is Nebbercracker being a weird guy and stealing all the kids' toys and bringing them inside. So anyway, DJ decides to sprint across the lawn to get Chowder's basketball back for him, and as he does, Mr. Nebbercracker, as per usual, comes running outside and dies on top of DJ. Yeah, I wish I was joking, but no, this movie just casually opens with an old man assaulting a child and then dying on top of him. You know, typical children's media. So, at this point, I thought it was pretty safe to say that I was very justified by being terrified by this movie as a child, and it just kept getting worse over the next couple of minutes, I'm not gonna lie. Chowder does make a good joke about how DJ's not a murderer, he's a manslaughterer, which is, yeah, it was a good joke. And then DJ's babysitter finally shows up, Elizabeth, aka Z. And I am quite sure that this movie, more specifically the character Z, has absolutely nothing to do with our generation's obsession with goth girls. Anyway, she's one of those like, oh, she actually real sweet around the parents, but when the parents are gone, she's real mean to the kids. It's just that cliche, and it doesn't really go anywhere. I don't know. She's fine.
That's a double entendre! Shut up!
There is a really funny post-credit scene with her, though, which, weirdly enough, I don't know why, but this movie has multiple post-credit scenes. It was really ahead of its time for that. Because when the movie wrapped up, I actually went, oh, I guess I don't really have to watch the credits. It's not like there's going to be a post-credit scene. But I wanted to watch and just check over the producers and the writers and see if I recognized anybody. And then all of a sudden, there were like multiple post-credit scenes, and they were all really funny, actually. So now that Mr. Nebbercracker died and the house, like, started a fire in its chimney and kind of roared and shook up, which was, again, pretty freaky. Pretty much anytime the house does anything, it's like just incredibly unsettling. DJ decides to go to sleep, even though it's like, I don't know, 6, 7 o'clock at night, and then he has a nightmare. And I know that this is not a fun nightmare because I had the same one several times thanks to this movie, where the house sort of like evilly laughs and its windows light up and its shadow like sneaks into the room and it makes a giant hand and it grabs DJ until he jumps awake. And like, this is just a legitimate horror scene. Like, there's no comedic or child-friendly spin or anything. This is just a straight up like regular horror scene thrown in this movie. I'm assuming you're supposed to laugh at the idea that the house is messing with him because, like, it's a house. What do you mean it's a monster? But that doesn't, like, when the sound design and the lighting and everything is just going full horror, you can't really laugh at it, no matter how silly it is in concept. So DJ wakes up and it's, like, not even midnight, and then he gets a phone call with no one on the other end. And it was at this point I actually started respecting this movie a little bit more because not only was it actually legitimately scary, but it seems like it's a really sweet love letter to horror movies given all these concepts. I mean, you have the little girl with the tricycle and then she gets attacked by the old man. It's literally set on Halloween, and I think the main score is supposed to be not a reference but sort of an ode to Halloween score. Like, it just has some similar notes in there, which I appreciated. The kind of stereotypical, the character has a nightmare and then he gets a phone call, which is what we're talking about right now. And the phone call is literally coming from inside the house, which is like that horror cliche joke that goes around a lot. And I don't know, it was just really cute and I did appreciate that. So he decides to call back because he doesn't understand where the call could possibly be coming from. And he uses *69, well, funny number. Anyway, it turns out, like I said, the call came from inside Nebbercracker's evil house, and so he hears the phone ringing across the street until Z's boyfriend jump scares him from behind. Which, once again, there's nothing funny about this scene. This is just a legitimate horror scene animated for children until it's revealed to be a fake-out scare. But this scene could easily happen in any old live-action horror movie, like for adults, exactly the same way. Which is kind of my point with this movie, is that they basically just made an adult horror movie and then got by with it being a kid's movie because it was animated and it just sounded too silly to be scary. Like, look at some of the shots of this house. It's just so eerie and off-putting. Like, holy cow, bro, they were cooking. So DJ decides to sneak out and meet up with Chowder at night at the local construction site that every town has, where they're building, like, I don't know, a giant hotel or casino or something.
Chowder, what are you doing?
And they decide to Chekhov's gun, a literal construction vehicle. Obviously, I didn't know what Chekhov's gun was when I was 5, but rewatching the movie, I was like, oh, they definitely do something with the construction vehicle, so they're just setting up the fact that it's sitting there with the keys in it for whatever reason, and of course that is what happens during the climax. But anyway, while that's going on, Z and her boyfriend have a bit of a goof where her boyfriend is explaining how Nevercracker's been terrorizing the neighborhood since even the boyfriend was a child, and he had this amazing kite that he flew everywhere until one day it landed on Nevercracker's lawn and he took it. So then Z kicks him out because he's not really in the mood to do adult things. How is this a kid's movie, man? So he walks out drinking his beer, and he gets mad because he looks at the house and he's drunk and he's upset about his childhood kite. So he yeets the beer at the house and he's like, oh, you really are dead, aren't you? Like, he's mocking this evil dead old man. Oh my god, bro, what is going on in this film? So the house decides enough is enough and like hypnotizes him by giving him his kite like in the doorway. So the boyfriend casually walks up in a freaking trance, and as a 5-year-old, I thought this was straight up mind control and the house could just kind of mind control you to come inside, which once again, I've definitely seen this in a horror movie before. I can't think of exactly what it's a reference to, but it's gotta be a reference to something else iconic. And then he gets kidnapped by the house. The kite, the house could like mind control the kite, like it just has so many powers, bro. It's crazy. This house is stacked. And once again, this is just a deeply unsettling shot. Like, they don't hold back. So he, as far as we know, he was just like murdered by the house, possibly violently, possibly not that violently. We don't really know, do we? So Chowder and DJ decide to sneak up to the house after they were talking at the construction site, and they see his bottle on the ground. And Chowder decides enough is enough. He's gonna show DJ there's nothing wrong with the house. He's gonna ding-dong ditch the house and it's gonna be fine. But as he gets up there, he gets a little spooked. And then he decides to ring the doorbell. And then all of a sudden, if the 2 windows with the shades being eyes wasn't enough, the entire front porch starts molding and cracking into a giant mouth full of teeth. And the door swings open and the carpet comes out as a giant tongue and tries to eat him until they manage to run away. And one of them screams, "Don't look back," I'm assuming DJ. To which Chowder turns around and looks at the house, and it roars at them at full volume, and then they slam the door and run inside. Once again, this is just a genuinely, like, intense and kind of scary sequence. Obviously, as an adult, it's really not that scary, but as a child, once again, I just have no idea how I was allowed to watch this. And not only that, I don't know how this was allowed to be shown to children in general, okay? And so after a night of peeing in bottles and careful observation with Chowder and DJ, they see a little girl going across the street, a little girl meaning a girl their age, so naturally there's going to be a love triangle here, try to deliver the house some cookies before Halloween, because she's like a Girl Scout or whatever. But of course, the house has to try and eat her, and if the house wasn't powerful enough, it could now control the entire sidewalk for some reason and use it as a ramp to force you into its mouth, because, you know, it wasn't scary enough. Now it's like if you go within the vicinity of the house, it's 100% gonna get you. And don't worry, it just keeps getting worse. So once again, this sequence isn't all that scary. I could see as a kid it was a bit thrilling, maybe. Here it is just kind of fun and entertaining. The whole movie is, really. And they manage to save the girl at the last second, and they run away from the house just as the babysitter shows up and the house goes back to normal. This is a load of bull honky because the babysitter fully opens the door and looks at the house just for us to get a shot of the house dramatically going back to being a normal house. And then we just see her open the door again to see the normal house, which even as a kid, I knew there was something off about that. And yeah, that's just poor filmmaking, quite honestly. That's really my biggest nitpick of this movie. I guess it's a pretty good movie, but that was a very egregious moment. Obviously, the idea here is it's going for that It style thing, where only the kids are the ones who could witness what the monster is really doing, and the adults are almost under a spell where they can't see it. I don't know, it doesn't really come off as the adults are almost like under a spell that they can't see it. It's more just lazy editing in that scene, but okay. So the girl joins their cause and they realize if they're gonna take this thing down, they need to talk to an expert. So then we get literally one of the goofiest scenes in movie history where they go to a pizza place and they find a fat guy playing video games and eating pizza, and they talk about how he's such a legend he once wore an adult diaper for like a week while playing a video game and got the world record. How we just jumped from a monster house almost eating a girl to whatever this is, I don't quite know, but this is just so iconic to me that I love the scene. And once again, this feels like a heavily memeable scene. There's a couple of them in this movie, and this is definitely the strongest memeable one. So he's kind of like, yeah, boys, I heard at Comic-Con that this is what happens when someone dies near a house and the soul gets merged with the brick and the wood and it becomes a monster. And it has like some official monster name. It doesn't matter because they never call it that. It's like, I think it's like Maleficent Dome, but like cooler, like Domus Maleficentness or something like that.
Domus Mactibilis.
It's so goofy and it doesn't even really matter. It's just funny to me how they literally show up to this pizza place and they're like, listen, this house is a monster, and we think it's because the old man killed his wife. And he's like, oh yeah, I've heard of that. This is what it is. And then he's exactly right. We find out how the house became a monster, and that's literally what it is. We'll get there when we get there, but it's just really funny they show up and he knows exactly what it is for no particular reason. Which also implies that this has happened many times in the world. Like, there are multiple monster houses, so I guess rooms for spin-off and sequels. Obviously, that's not what they meant at the time, but to childhood me, the fact that he's right, I think subconsciously put in my brain that any house could realistically be a monster house. And that really just did not sit well with me. So the kids conduct their master plan, okay? Their master plan, get ready for this. It's for Chowder to steal drugs from his dad's pharmacy while they make a dummy that they fill with the drugs, and then they're gonna roll it in front of the house in a disguise so it looks like a trick-or-treater, because the house specifically hates trick-or-treaters, and then the house is gonna get drugged and fall asleep, so they're gonna go inside with their water guns and spray the fire to kill it. Because the pizza guy was like, hey, if you put out the heart, which is the fire in the chimney that you saw, that's how you gotta kill it. So they try to do that, and their plan goes awry. For whatever reason, they put it on a vacuum, and the vacuum just goes forward when they turn it on. I'm no expert, but that vacuum would definitely just tip over if it was full of like cold medicine and had like jackets and helmets and stuff on it. But anyway, whatever. So they think their plan is gonna work. The monster is slowly getting ready to eat it, but then the police show up, and you know, because the police just have to ruin everything, and Kevin James is also one of the cops for whatever reason, they decide to arrest the children. Now, listen, I'm no expert, but are cops allowed to arrest children?
Littering, loitering, vandalism, vagrancy, and treason.
Looting? Yeah, they did steal from Chowder's dad, so lock him up, I guess. Anyway, Kevin James decides to chug a bottle of cold medicine, and then they're gonna take them to prison, but as they're getting in the car, they hear a weird rustle. And that's when the monster house decides it isn't powerful enough yet, it's gotta raise the bar, so suddenly it can control all the trees on the property like hands and arms and decides to eat the police officers. And not only does it eat both of the police officers pretty, like, brutally, it eats and destroys the entire police car with the children inside it. And the movie ends. All of them die. Nah, just kidding, I'm yanking your chain, joshing you a little bit. The kids jump out of the car at the last second, and now they're wandering around inside the house. So they go into the basement, and there's just a dead body lying there, as tends to happen in children's movies, and it turns out it's Nebbercracker's wife. So they think that means he 100% did kill her and then bury her in the house. But we see that's not exactly what happened. Once DJ just trips and falls face to face with the dead body, the entire house decides to go insane, and then it starts murdering them one by one, because this is a children's movie. They try to escape, and they end up making the house throw up by attacking the uvula.
Oh, so it's a girl house. What?
So the house spits them out, and it's all injured, and it's crying, and they start to have, you know, the main character falling out of, I hate you, I can't believe you made me go through with the thing, and the thing went badly, and now I hate you. Although it is kind of cliche and boring, and the split up only lasts for like 3 seconds because an ambulance arrives and runs over DJ, and he dies, and the movie ends. But once again, the whole sequence of the kids having to escape the house is pretty, like, scary and stressful. Like, DJ's getting eaten by the stairs. Like, it's just a bunch of not very kid-friendly things. I have to give this movie credit because it is genuinely entertaining and kind of like thrilling in a way. Once again, as an adult, it's not anything super crazy you haven't seen before, but if you were showing this to like a 12 or 13-year-old, then I think it would be pretty appropriate and they would find it decently freaky while also like an exciting film. And it seems like Nebbercracker has stolen an ambulance and broken out of a hospital. Now, obviously, the movie doesn't imply this, but if you look, he's the one driving the ambulance. There's no hospital workers. And he's still in his, like, medical outfit, patient clothing, whatever you want to call it. They didn't give him his clothes back that he arrived to the hospital in. So it seems like he broke out of the hospital and stole the ambulance, because when do you come back home in an ambulance? If I had to guess, he did so because he knew it was Halloween and he had to, like, defend the house from the kids, so the house didn't eat all the kids. But, like, it definitely seems like he stole this ambulance. So then this is when we get the big reveal that Nebbercracker didn't murder his wife. He actually loved his wife and she died tragically in a construction accident. What is this movie, bro? I've lost the plot. I can't even describe this shit. It's so goofy. So we get what's supposed to be a really sweet and tender love story between Nebuchadnezzar and his wife Constance, and it's just a little bit odd. So what happened was Nebuchadnezzar was like in the war, and they went to a circus event for like entertainment or something to see the world's fattest woman. She's as big as the house, get the pun. And he decides that people aren't treating her right. So he takes her cage and like tows it away to the middle of nowhere where they buy a plot of land and start building a house. And you might be thinking to yourself, okay, so she's like a circus freak and this is supposed to be a really, really long time ago. Like way too long for it to be a single lifetime. But anyway, why is she in a cage? Like, I get it, she's in the circus, but she literally has a cage. Like, she's just a fat lady. She's not a monster. And I like how it's supposed to be really sweet because Nebuchadnezzar's like, I'll take you away. But he doesn't take her out of the cage. He just tows the cage. What is going on? So then the house starts getting really angry as Nebuchadnezzar reveals everything to the kids in the epic flashback. And he's like, listen, DJ, like, I gotta go back to my wife. She's the only person I have in this world. And DJ's like, but that's not true. And it is actually kind of a nice moment, to be honest. Like, everything with Nebuchadnezzar's character specifically is well done. It's just really goofy that DJ kind of doesn't have an arc, and everything with Constance is just hella wacky. Like I said, they kept her in a cage. What is going on, bro? So it's actually kind of a nice message that he really, like, this is the love of his life, as weird as the situation is, and he just can't let her go and admit that she has truly turned into a monster, and there's likely nothing left of the woman he loved. Deep moment for Monster House. So anyway, Constance decides enough is enough, and she attaches 2 of the trees to her sides and turns into a giant house monster that can walk around, and I guess has just given up on being discreet because she starts terrorizing the neighborhood, and it leads to an epic chase sequence. Anyway, the final act of this movie I'm kind of going to blow through because it's really not that exciting. The monster chases them to the construction site. Chowder thinks he destroys the entire house using the construction vehicle he was in earlier, but then it reforms into a giant monster ball thingy-mabobber, and at this point they've just kind of overcooked. As a kid, I thought that this was like the single scariest monster design humanly possible, because, you know, I was pretty aped-brained as a child, and I was like, oh, look, spikes, and it's even more unhinged than it was before. But in retrospect, the actual house design and being like almost a face, but it's like a creepy old wooden house, is just way more off-putting than a giant wood and glass monster ball thingamabobber. So definitely a downgrade for the final showdown, but, you know. Then DJ kisses the ginger girl on the lips, very exciting moment. There's a lot of like flirting between them, and Chowder trying to flirt and being terrible at it because he's literally me, and neither of us have Riz.
Well, Dad, why don't you kiss my hairy butt? Hey, DJ, got any beer?
And DJ dramatically throws a stick of dynamite right into the chimney. We have like 2 insanely improbable throws back to back on top of Mr. Nebuchadnezzar having a cannon for an arm and throwing a brick all the way onto the roof of the house to get its attention. So just everyone in this movie is like Tom Brady, I guess. And the house blows up, and then we actually get this surprisingly beautiful shot of Constance sort of like as a smoke soul thing dancing with Mr. Nebuchadnezzar one last time before she fades away, and he celebrates how he's finally free of her and how she's free as well.
We have been trapped for 45 years, and now we're free. We're free! Oh, thank you, friend!
But like, remember how 30 seconds ago they were blowing up a giant monster house? This movie's weird, because it's like really good, but it's also just really bad at the same time. And then, like I said, the movie just kind of ends with DJ being like, you know what, we've worked hard, let's go get our candy, and they decide to go trick-or-treating. So that was a lot of rambling about this movie, because, as you can tell, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It's not some crazy, incompetent movie, and it is genuinely enjoyable. It was just a really weird experience trying to rewatch it as an adult. In terms of, like, characters and plot and story, it's a little bit bland, but in actual, like, execution of, you know, character designs and monster designs and general concepts, it's fairly interesting, and it definitely holds your attention. Recently, I've definitely been improving my skills of enjoying movies for more of the technical aspects and not just the plot progression aspects, and because this movie has sort of weak plot progression, it just kind of keeps along at a decent pace, you can still enjoy a lot of other aspects of it. I wouldn't actually mind seeing like some sort of remake of this where it's actually geared towards the kids that grew up with it that are around my age and could go see an R-rated movie in theaters. So it wouldn't be like an actual PG remake, it would be an R-rated sort of update for the modern age. And usually that sounds bad, but I wouldn't make it all like technology focused and it's like an evil smart home or anything stupid like that. No, keep it nice and simple. keep a lot of the classic horror movie references that they have in here, and I think you'd actually have a pretty good product. Because like I said, the music, like the general score in this movie is pretty scary. A lot of the crazy hectic sound design and camera movements and lighting in times are pretty spooky, and it just generally does a good job of being a real horror movie, even though it's for children. As the movie went on, it definitely got less and less scary and more silly, where I could definitely see it being listed as a comedy if you only saw the second half, because I think the part where the house, you know, uses a tree arm to eat an entire police car, like, yeah, that's a little bit silly. But like I said, the opening couple of scare scenes are genuinely just straight up good horror scenes. So what have we learned? Well, I definitely wasn't just a little bitch baby who was scared of this movie for no reason. It certainly earned its keep in my mind as like the scariest thing ever, but upon rewatch, I actually do feel a little bit better coming back to it and being able to laugh at the silliness of some of it. Would I advise you to watch it now if you've never seen it before? I don't know, probably not. If you're looking for something just a little bit silly to throw on in the background, could be a good time. But if you watched it as a kid, and maybe I've just unlocked this in your brain, definitely go and give it a try, because even with my review talking about most of the movie, you're probably still going to get a good amount out of it watching it as an adult and not being too freaked out about it, or catching on to a lot of Chowder's adult jokes. Alright, I think it's time to wrap this up. This has been fun, and a tad therapeutic, if not a bit too long. I've been away for a while, so hopefully you do enjoy this video, as it will likely take me a very long time to put together. But anyway, thank you all so much for watching. If you saw Monster House as a kid and it frightened you, let me know in the comments. If you've never seen it before and you plan on watching it thanks to this video, let me know your thoughts on it as well. And otherwise, thank you so much for watching, and keep it crispy.